Every year, billions of dollars are spent on training. And every year, trainers and managers lament that training didn't stick or that the ROI on training was iffy. And people who sat through training adopted it in varying degrees initially, but largely forgot about it over time. We can do better. You can set training up to have a more lasting and strategically sound impact, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. I'm Deb Calvert, author of the bestseller Discover Questions Get You Connected, and of the award-winning blogs Connect to Lead, Connect to Win, and Connect to Sell. And based on that sentence alone, you may have guessed that connections are very important to me. They are. So I'd be honored if you'd connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Google+. My social media handles on screen along with my email address. My company is People First Productivity Solutions. We build organizational strength by putting people first. And I work as an executive coach, meeting facilitator, trainer, and consultant to help people improve their business connections and to help organizations improve their people practices. Workplace culture, including training and the reinforcement of training and the stickiness of training, those are all important components of a people-first environment. I've been a corporate HR director with a Fortune 500, and I've worked with many HR, L&D, OD, and other professionals since opening my company in 2006. This presentation today is based on my own observations over the past decade and what I'm seeing in organizations that do and organizations that do not adequately reinforce training. Before we get started, for those of you who are here and are new to Bright Talk, I'd like to point out a few important features for you. First, please be sure to notice the link called Attachments. In that tab, I've included lots of bonus resources for you, including one to join the Connect community, where we push out great information at no charge, new infographics, tools, tips, techniques, things that you can practically use in your business. Secondly, you can subscribe to this channel, and if you subscribe to this Bright Talk channel, you'll get more content every month from me. And then Bright Talk makes it easy to stay on top of what else is coming out that's new and relevant for you. And then finally, please note that you can ask questions. Ask them at any time during this presentation if you're here live. I'll glance at those and attempt to fold in the answers as we go, and any remaining questions I'll take at the end. And there's also a place where you can review this presentation, so I welcome your feedback there. Okay, enough of the setup. Let's get back to the business at hand. You came to hear about some new ways to reinforce training, so I want to get back to that. But first, especially for those who are not in a learning and development function, let's review some basics. The process of learning, it doesn't always happen instantaneously. In a training setting, that expectation is probably unreasonable, because what happens really is that people must first have their attention captured. And then you have to sustain that focus. And that alone, as you know, can be quite challenging. But when you get it, when you get focused attention, then people are able to take in information. But we're human, so we're not immediately able. We're not only human, but we're adults, and so that phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, there's a little truth to that, because adults are not able to immediately process and accept new information. We need time to evaluate it against our own experiences and to integrate it with what we already know. And this is why all too often training becomes an information dump, and learning doesn't occur because this critical part of the learning process is not given the time and space needed for real knowledge transfer to happen. Only with that processing time can we then form a conclusion about what we're hearing, what we're learning, and it's that conclusion that's the basis of our buy-in. It's the basis of transforming our beliefs, and it's what causes us to be committed, to take action, and then to try something. When we form a comprehend it for ourselves, then and only then will we get to a place where we'll attempt some on-the-job application. And by the way, those first attempts, they will be tentative. And we're looking for places to try that out where it's low risk as we test our conclusions and our abilities to master what we've learned and to make it our own. So this, in a nutshell, this is the learning process. And then beyond that is the process of mastery, which of course takes practice. Practice will never, ever happen without a full learning process and then without continued reinforcement of what was learned beyond the classroom setting. And that's why reinforcement is so incredibly important. It's not an optional add-on to training. It's not a luxury. It shouldn't be an afterthought. It's a continuation, even at times a backtracking from the training. So let me just put the icing on the cake here to show you the impact of reinforcement. This particular graphic pertains to sales training, and you've probably seen something similar that applies to all training from ATD. That's a popular graphic that has a similar curve, though, for all training. And what both of these graphics represent is what happens before training. You've got a baseline of productivity, and what is the impact of training over time. Here at the bottom of this graphic, you see 14 weeks. So what's happening after training, and what is the lift in productivity versus the baseline when somebody came into training. And you'll notice here, just like you would in the ATD graphic, you'll notice that there is actually an inherent risk in training. You can actually reduce the productivity level of someone who comes to training. We're looking at the bottom red line here. Someone who comes to training and then that training is not reinforced. The get back to work, you've got to catch up after being away at training, that factor diminishes the baseline that people came in with. You can have less productivity as a result of training. And this graphic, like the one in ATD, they both look at learning effectiveness in a results metric. And this one happens to be, for salespeople, a quota lift versus where they came in. So that red line's really scary. We'd much rather be playing with that green line, which is the supposition, the expectation when somebody funds training. That's what they're looking for. And that green line, you'll notice that there are two things that happen during the training. The training is engaging, it's on target, it's well delivered. And then after the training event, something else is happening. You get even greater lift because of the reinforcement and some additional complementary learning, some reminders, some action items, some practice and feedback, and that the training is reinforced by actual expectations too, expectations for behavior change. So we only get this ability to have the green line, the upper line, with a double 100% increase in productivity, right, that over 14 weeks. That reinforcement comes after quality content and delivery, and then we're able to get this baseline improvement, and that's what it's all about. That's what we're looking for. It only happens with reinforcement. Let me cover a few more basics before we do new things here. Adult learning theory tells us that classroom learning can only take us so far. Adults need time and they need application to learn and make behavior changes. So what you see on screen now, these are three big and very obvious ways to reinforce training. You may already be doing all of these. But I just wanted to put this here as a reminder. Are you linking your coaching and your metrics and your critical reflection time? Are you linking that directly to your training and learning efforts? There's an opportunity, if not, an opportunity to get more mileage from your metrics and more impact from your coaching if you focus on the training takeaways that you're looking for. And don't forget that critical reflection, that happens with or without you. Someone goes to training, they sit through the classroom activities, they leave, and now it's time to critically reflect. With or without you directing that, there will be critical reflection. You probably want to manage that, to stay involved with that in some fashion. Otherwise, it may go negative because there is no vulnerable time, no time more vulnerable than after training when you're left on your own to figure out how to apply it and to get the results that people hoped you would when you went to training. So careful reinforcement, dedicated focus, an opportunity for people to critically reflect in a way that they will see the positives and they'll still continue to have a safe place to practice so that they don't abandon or go negative on what it was that you taught them. Now, I'm going to cover some additional basics here because, as you saw on our graphic, we've got to have quality training before we can ever get any hope from our reinforcement. And here's a misperception that I see so often that I wanted to tackle it head-on, directly. As you know, training is not, and it never will be, a cure-all. It is not a magic bullet solution. You will always be disappointed in your ROI and your outcomes if you hire some presenter to deliver an off-the-shelf program and that's all that happens. That's why here at People First Productivity Solutions, we don't do training without consulting our clients on outcomes and reinforcement. And it's why we customize our programs every single time they're delivered. It's why, despite paying more, our clients are very happy with the results of our manager and sales and leadership development programs. But what I'm suggesting to you is that you take some of the things that we do, and you can do them yourself inside before you ever pick up the phone to talk to a trainer or before you ever develop your own internal programs. What you see there on screen, these are the questions. This is the guide to being able to get a more holistic approach. Reinforcing the training is much, much easier when you've already worked out these types of details that include what is the goal for the training. And don't be satisfied with a simple goal. We want them to learn to do a better job. Okay, what specifically, what kind of diagnosis have you done to know what it will take for them to get better results? Make sure your goals are very, very specific so that your training can hit the nail on the head. And if it's too much to tackle all at once, don't. Stage it. Break it down into manageable chunks. Instead of having, let's say, a 3-day workshop, go ahead and put together a series of 2-hour or 4-hour workshops and give people a chance to recalibrate what they're doing with what they've learned and to practice it and master it before they come back for the next piece of it. If you need to do an intensive, an immersion workshop of some sort, make sure that you've allowed enough time that it's not an information dump for 3 days, but instead it's 4 days, but there's great practice during those 4 days so that somebody can really take away and have an ability to apply what they learned. So your goals will help you to make those kinds of determinations. Before you ever have any training that starts, also consider what you see in the second 2 columns. How will you know when the goal has been reached? Think about that before the training. What do you want to see? What are the benchmarks, your baselines that you're starting with? How much lift do you anticipate? How will you get to that amount of productivity or whatever else you're measuring? And what are the ways? So in addition to training, because it won't do it all alone, what other efforts are aligned with that? How are you going to be reinforcing? And don't forget to ask the question, how do you know that training is the right solution? I've conducted training in years past. I learned this lesson the hard way, but I've conducted training in the past where it turns out that it was never a skills gap. It was never something that needed to happen in a classroom, but that there were cultural barriers inside the organization or mixed messages or overload so that people just simply did not have time to do what they were being trained to do. So be realistic, assess the entire situation, and set yourself up for success by doing so. Now, another thing that I see far too often, I'd be remiss not to cover it here, is that the style of teaching also matters a great deal. And I know for some of you I am preaching to the choir here, but I have a mixed audience, so I want to be sure to cover these basics too. In my corporate Fortune 500 role, I hired and trained trainers and field coaches in 31 markets. And we did A/B testing on the programs that we launched, and we closely analyzed what was happening as those trainers, all new, were being developed. We had metrics that were results-based, clear links between training and outcomes that we were looking for. And so I've continued to assess training in this way, and I've developed a competency model for trainers that is very thorough. It goes well beyond facilitation skills, by the way, that's not attached in the attachments tab there because it's really not a standalone. It's best accompanied by a conversation. But I do want you to have access to it. If you would like to email me and set up a time to talk about it, I'd be happy to give you a copy, but I just didn't think it would be something that would stand alone. So feel free to initiate that contact with me. But at a high level, I'm sharing this particular contrast because it sums up the biggest mistakes that I see in classrooms. And I want you to remember that before you focus your time and attention on reinforcing training, you've got to be making sure that the delivery of the training is effective. Making it stick starts with making it appealing. And what you see there are some simple contrasts. We can call them old school and newer, although newer is still 20 years old. These are just things that not everybody's figured out yet. We could also label the columns what works in a classroom when kids are in elementary school, middle school, versus what works for adult learners. And we're aiming for everything that's over in the right-hand column, making sure that people are able to absorb the information because it's delivered in a manner that's appealing, a way that they are actually able to take it in. Now, here's where we are. We're talking about how important it is to reinforce training. That matters greatly. And we're building up to 5 fresh strategies for reinforcing training. But as I said, I really feel I'd be remiss if I skipped over the quality aspect of the training itself. What you are going to reinforce has to be worthy of reinforcing. Trainers. I'm talking about the people who truly get knowledge transfer. Solid trainers. They're trained in adult learning principles and in instructional design methods and in facilitation that's learner-centric. Presenters, on the other hand, no matter how engaging or entertaining they are, they often don't realize how they're actually creating barriers to learning. And that's why I wanted to spend a moment here, because this is accidental. Nobody intends to create a barrier to learning, but without understanding what really goes into adult learning, this happens. And if there are barriers set up, the reinforcement is going to become problematic. It's actually going to be a negative to reinforce something that was a negative. So we have to be cautious here. As adults, during and after training, we cannot absorb and retain information unless we have time for these 4 elements. And I'd like to take them one by one, starting with self-directed learning. As adults, we need the opportunity to make it our own. We need to have some aspect of the training that is paced for me or that gives me the opportunity to go out and do my own additional investigation, my own additional homework. This is why pre-work is such a good strategy for adult learning. It doesn't have to be extensive, doesn't have to be complicated. The point of pre-work is to give people a place where they can dial in, where they get the opportunity to self-direct some of their own learning. This one is so important that one of the things we do here at People First Productivity Solutions, a tip that you're welcome to steal, we survey every learner before we enter the classroom. We use that survey information to not only prompt thinking, to give people a chance to do some of their own self-direction, but because we really want them to have self-direction, we take what we hear in the survey and we dial up certain topics that we know are of greatest interest to this group. We use some of their language on slides if there are particular issues that are surfaced in the training. We really listen to what people are saying, and we give them a true opportunity to self-direct their own learning. So surveying, giving folks a chance to do a little bit of pre-work. During the training, giving opportunities for breakout discussions. If you're breaking your training into manageable chunks, giving some interim assignments. All of it counts for giving people that self-direction in their own learning. Hand in hand with this comes critical reflection. To learn, as an adult, I need, for my own experience, the things I've already learned and done, I need those to be dignified. And I need them to have a place where they can get aligned with the new information. I'm grappling. I'm trying to figure out how does what I'm learning match my own experiences. Does this resonate with me? And if not, why not? Let me challenge it and dissect it and pick it apart so that I can. This is what learners are trying to do. They may sound like they're hostile or contrary, but what they're really trying to do is bring the information in alignment with what they already know. Two-way dialogue, the opportunity to ask questions that challenge the trainer, the coach, each other, breaking this into manageable chunks to allow time for this, and then thinking about the process. We always hear about learn, know, do. Throw in reflect, learn, reflect, know, do. We know that learning agility, one of the core competencies in 2017, we know that part of learning agility, something that enables it, is the opportunity to reflect. The best learners are people who are also reflective, and when we give people a chance to do some reflection, to direct that reflection so that they're calibrating, critically reflecting what they already know with what they're learning, that gives the best opportunity for extended learning and for being able to cross-apply what they already know. This is how you accelerate the learning for them. Something else we need to allow time for during and after training is hands-on, experiential application. Right? As people are trying to calibrate what they've learned to fit their own experiences, we need to also give them new experiences, baby steps or stair steps from where they are to where you want them to be, little experiences along the way that help them to make some of those discoveries, to internalize and to create some buy-in for them. Coaching and role play are a wonderful way to do this because if it's set up correctly, it can be a safe environment and it can be a place to stumble over the things that are in your own way, to get comfortable with the new ways of doing things. What you're looking, though, to do is to allow enough of this so that people get past that initial attempt that was so awkward. It shouldn't be a one-time role play in a classroom, which didn't go quite so well. It needs to be a couple of role plays and some coaching. Let it sink in a little bit at a time. Don't let people stop at the place where they were embarrassed, because that's where they're going to ignore, dismiss what it was that you've introduced to them. We need enough reinforcement that they're going to get past that point. And it is true. Adults don't sit in classrooms every day. We're not talking about kids who are nimble in their learning. Adults often have to relearn how to learn. It's so easy and so tempting to leave the classroom and just go back to business as usual. What you're looking for is a deeper learning. And one of the ways that you get that is by having learning be a value within your organization or within your team, to create a learning culture, to always be asking people to learn and teach and grow and develop themselves and each other. By giving them opportunities, frequent opportunities for experiential application and critical reflection, you'll stir the pot and people will begin to embrace learning more frequently. And those who operate in those kinds of cultures, they have higher levels of engagement. You'll find that you're retaining employees longer. There are many benefits to a learning culture. Now, this is, of course, all impacted by the manager's behaviors. And so the other attachments that I've put in here for you today, there are 3 of them, and they all pertain to this environment, creating this really rich environment where your supervisors are creating a learning culture. So feel free to download those. What you have there, there's information about a training workshop. It's a supervisory training program, workplace conversations. It's also offered in Spanish, so there are opportunities for you there to figure out if you need Spanish language or English language training. That's something that will help your trainers and your supervisors to create this culture. But more do-it-yourself kinds of tools are also there, the do-it-yourself leadership boot camp for creating this kind of culture, and then just a very tactical tool, the engagement checklist for managers, day-to-day, some of the things they could be doing immediately to get the kind of engagement you're looking for. Okay, so leaving time for these are still the basics, the things you may already know and are just getting reminded about when it comes to reinforcement. And we also have to remove the accidental barriers. I'd like to give you some examples because they're accidental simply because we don't recognize that the barriers are being put in place. So I'd like to give you some examples of how these barriers that you see on screen are so often triggered without ever realizing it. I've been in a lot of workshops lately, at conferences in particular, where the speakers are taking an approach of being very in your face. And that's entertaining, right? The sarcasm, some of their aggressive messages about what we're doing wrong, some of the stark, in-your-face approach that they take does get your attention, but it also has a sense of people leaving feeling a bit defensive, a bit like maybe they've been judged. They didn't get an opportunity to respond. They didn't get a chance to critically reflect. They got more of the in-your-face, you're doing it wrong kind of message. It's only a starting point to get their attention if you take that type of attack. Now, the same thing happens if you are having a role play, but it's not in a safe environment. So think twice before your role plays are something, let's say, where you set up a panel of managers to judge the role play. That comes later. Give people a chance first for it to be a safe environment where they can role play and maybe they kind of laugh at themselves. They all make mistakes. It's an okay thing. They're failing forward. It's all about the learning. Don't make it something with so much onus on it at the beginning that it is not going to give them true learning. That's just performance. And anybody can do performance once by the book. You're looking for something deeper. Barriers to learning also happen if the training isn't easily translatable or if the post-classroom learning isn't supported. People will abandon it. That's why the customization, the things you think about at the front end, when you're planning your outcomes, you want to make sure it's highly relevant, that it's in the language and with the examples that come directly from that group. If it's one-directional lecture, you're not building in critical reflection. No matter how smart, talented, esteemed the speaker is, if it's one direction, people aren't able to calibrate it to their own experiences. That will create a barrier to learning. So balance your sage on the stage with some guide on the side opportunities for people to learn and grow. And I might also ask you to think about your gamification. I'm seeing a lot of e-learning systems where gamification it's a lot of fun, it's engaging, people are earning badges, but it's about quantity instead of quality. And it becomes hyper-competitive to see who can get the most without taking a look at who can get the best or who's doing something with it after they leave the platform. So all things to think about. I know I'm giving you a lot here, but I wanted this to be comprehensive and not take away from some of the background. And now we're going to get into some of the good stuff about the new ways to reinforce. You see here the 9 phases of learning. This is familiar for many of you. I want to point out that the first 4 items on this list, these are the things that happen before and during training, all the way up to the point when you present the new material. And it is presented in a way that it can be absorbed, that people can actually learn from it. But 1 through 4, that's where we all too often stop. We forget that there are 5 more phases of learning that happen after training, after the classroom delivery. Now, these should be planned before anybody ever steps foot in the classroom, but they will happen after the training event. Development is what we're looking for here. It's not going to be something that happens in the classroom. We're not going to get from where they are now to where you want them to be in that one singular event. You want their development, in fact, to be gradual and steady. So whatever it is that you are assessing, that performance that you're now providing feedback on and assessing, that's something that you want to build in incremental steps. Did they learn? We can measure that right after training. Are they applying a little bit at a time? Are they applying even more? Is the performance showing the desired result? A little bit today and a little bit more next week, and 14 weeks later, did we get where we wanted to go? So be sure that this is staged and that it's gradual. Give people a chance to succeed, and continue to measure it so that they know how important it is to you. Here again, we have some basic reinforcement techniques. I didn't want to assume or gloss over this. I wanted just to put it up here because it all does have an impact. Having common language out of training, if the training talked about some new methodologies or some new terminologies, let's start using those. Let's not default back to what we've always said before, because defaulting suggests that training wasn't an event, a one-time thing, but now we're back to the way we've always done things. Go ahead and create some new job aids. Whatever job aids were introduced in training, make them a part of the routine, starting immediately after training. And this is one reason why it matters so much for your managers to be a part of training, to at least get the executive session. They have to use the language. You want them to embed the job aids. If they are doing things the way that they were always done before, change won't happen. Even more powerful, of course, is for the managers to sit side by side with their team in the training to model vulnerability and openness and learning and willingness to fail forward and to try again. If the managers are modeling all of that, it sends a clear signal that it's okay, expected, and despite that vulnerability and discomfort, we're all in this together and we're going to keep moving forward. Expectations ought to be a part of your plan. Not only do I expect that you attend the training, but I expect that after the training, those skills that you learned are going to be applied. I expect that you're going to fail the first couple of times you try this. After all, it's new. I expect, though, that you don't stop there and abandon what you were taught, but that over time you're going to get better and better, and that you're actually going to get some results. And these are the results, specifically, that I'm looking for. So with all of that in place, let's now talk about 5 fresh strategies, and I want to give you some examples with them. 5 fresh strategies to layer on top of everything else that we've talked about. Everything else, maybe you're already doing it, but go back and review, because this is the foundation. One of the strategies I've been seeing more and more lately, and I really like it, is to make the training and the learning meaningful. This goes beyond making it personally relevant. Remember, millennials especially are looking for meaning in everything that they do. The rewards that they're given for them have a greater impact if they're meaningful. So instead of writing a check, what can you do besides the financial incentive? What could you do that might even provide greater context or give them stronger motivation? What could help them to see the big picture? Inside your organization, especially if you're a mission-based organization, how does this training, how do these new skills link to what you are hoping to achieve? Whether it's your vision or your mission, your training should always have a direct link to it, and that should be evident. It should be talked about as people are signing up for training, during the training, and certainly in the reinforcement phase. Now, you can also make this even more personal. A group of HRIS trainers who were being asked to now do demos instead of just training clients who are already in place. As they were learning those skills, they were going to do a role play. Their role plays were videotapes that they could go back and watch them over and over again, and they did them in a series of 3. The 3rd videotape session was the mastery session, and the best videotape role play had an incentive tied to it, and that incentive in this organization was $1,500 to the charity of your choice. And that the list of choices was long, but it was all mission-based, tied to the organization's goals. So people really responded to this. It wasn't just about passing the test. It wasn't just about acquiring the skills. It was now a bit of a competition in a fun way to be able to give money to the charity that they believed in. So that context and that link to the mission and being able to see that there was something personally that they could do by investing in these skills that they were learning, this reinforcement was really, really powerful. Another idea I'd like you to consider is not rewarding mastery, which comes much after training, Don't wait for those ultimate results, but instead tune in to notice the early efforts that people are making. Think about the awards and the gamification not being about the right answers, but about the application and the effort that's made on the front end. The only way people get to the ultimate results you're looking for is by taking some risks, experimenting, some trial and error so that they know what doesn't work and then they can make improvements. And if you're rewarding the person who's diving in to learn the new system, if you are giving people the chance to be early adopters and then championing those early adopters and celebrating their efforts, what you also end up with is a way that you're motivating others too. An example of this, there was a class in a non-for-profit, and it was a class on grant writing for a group of 8 people who had never written grants before. So it was a beginner's course on grant writing, which of course was very daunting. There was a lot of hesitance on the part of this group, and they were asked to write a first draft, but everybody procrastinated. This was just such a big, big assignment for them. But one person made an effort, and it was pretty bad. So there was a choice, and the folks who were reviewing the grant had a choice. They could either have a negative reaction. They actually did consider putting everybody back in training, but instead they decided to handle it a different way. They decided to handle it with a strong, positive message about how proud they were of the person who took the initial efforts. They made this an icebreaker to get the hesitance and the onus away from everybody else, to make it okay to write a bad grant, in fact, to write several bad ones, so that they at least had something to work with and they could provide coaching and help people get better. So reward those early attempts, free up, liberate people so that they are able to move beyond that. Reverse mentoring, this is about anybody who has knowledge being able to mentor anybody else, up, down, across the organization, anybody else who doesn't have as much knowledge about that one subject. So don't limit your ideas about who can teach and model and mentor something. Shouldn't be the trainers and the managers only who are doing your reinforcing. Think about instead having a power user for anything that's new, whether it involves technology or not. In one case, there was a 20-something that I ran across on a finance team who was very, very interested in the organization's shift. They were appointing human resources business partners to each division. Now, this person was not a manager, but was appointed the role of helping the HR business partner learn about the finance operation. And it was really fun for this individual to be able to do that as the reverse mentor, teaching someone who was older and who had been in the organization much longer, but teaching that HR business partner about the finance function. And there was a real benefit because the finance person learned a lot about HR in the process of doing this reverse mentoring. And it created a learning culture where it just opened up to both sides some real vulnerability and some opportunity to dignify what people already knew and to expand them into what they did not know. Now, there are 2 more of these, but I'd encourage you now to start posting any questions that you have so I can take those at the end. The 4th strategy here, that is one that's very effective in reinforcing your learning, is to generate some storytelling. But think about the stories that you tell. Great stories about people who tried something, didn't do so well, and tried again. Those are the kinds of stories that you want to have out there. Don't talk about the things the way they used to be. That sort of storytelling won't help you to create new experiences, new beliefs, new actions, new results. You're looking to change what people believe and what they are experiencing, so stories about the what if. And being able to get some testimonials and some stories about the positives when people tried new things and had some early success. Those are the right sort of reinforcing stories that you're looking to tell. In one situation, I worked with a wholesale operation that had opened a small retail shop. Their team members were all long-term tenured employees, but having the retail operation required a little different type of interaction with the public. And one team member who was just a natural-born storyteller, that team member started telling stories about customers that were really challenging, but they were mostly negative stories. So the manager coached that storyteller by asking what-if questions. What if you had done it this way? Or what if they had, as a customer, asked you this instead? And the what-if questions, they were very subtle, but they began to reframe the stories. They became solution-based stories. And the stories themselves had a different impact when they became more positive and more focused on doing things differently versus comparing to the way things had always been done. And then finally, here's a way to reinforce training for those who are really, really resistant to it. Right, these are the folks that we typically force into training. They sit at the back of the room. I can read it immediately when they come in. They come in right at the last minute. They sit back. They take a posture that's sort of challenging to the trainer. I challenge you to teach me something new. Well, how about this? How about instead of forcing those folks into the training classroom, we offered them the opportunity to prove us wrong. So we have some who attend training, some who don't, and it's now an A-B split. It's a test environment to see what the impact of training is. And, of course, you've got great training, you've got great reinforcement of the training, and you have to remain open-minded to the results just in case the people who are resistant are actually right. That could happen. But you're monitoring for appropriate and genuine application of both the old ways things have always been done and the new ways that you're suggesting may be done, and you're hoping to get some true believers, the old way versus the new way. Okay, so those are 5 strategies to consider. Whatever you do, though, whatever you're going to do, be sure to reinforce your training. Don't expect it to stand alone. It will not stand alone. And if you need some additional help with this, we're here. Over here at People First Productivity Solutions, we work with people like you to develop a training plan that fits your learning strategy and your company's goals. We build organizational strength by putting people first. So let me know how we can help you to activate, how we can help you to achieve your goals for learning and development. Our consultations are always no cost, no obligation. I'm Deb Calvert, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Let me take your questions in the remaining time that we have here, and don't forget about the review feature so you can give me some of your feedback. The question that we have is, do these strategies work in all environments, including with students? And I would have to say yes. I don't spend a lot of time with students, and I'm not sure what level of students you're referring to, but I do teach at UC Berkeley and at San Jose State University, and I work with several educational institutions. I have no cause to believe that this would not work with students at any level. So I encourage you to try these strategies and let me know. Let me know how they work for you. Okay, with that, our time is up. If you have one-off questions for me that you'd rather ask in person, this is an open invitation. I'm Deb Calvert, and we will talk soon. Thanks for being here.